The federal government says the CEOs of Canada's top 5 grocery chains have agreed to work with it to stabilize food prices. It follows a warning by the Prime Minister to the companies to offer real relief or face consequences. The CBC's Ashley Burke has the details.
How do you feel about being summoned here, sir?
It's an image the government wants Canadians to see.
We're hoping for a productive meeting. Thank you.
The CEOs of Canada's grocery giants called into the industry minister's office to address the rising cost of food.
Our government is going to do everything in our power to make sure prices stabilize.
After sinking in the polls this summer, the government's now targeting the country's 5 largest grocery chains, demanding they come up with a plan by Thanksgiving. The Prime Minister spoke to Front-Burner's Jamie Poisson about it.
What kind of plan do you want from them? Do you want them to tell you that they're going to bring grocery prices down, or do you want them to just stabilize prices?
I think stabilizing is the first good thing, but seeing prices come down would be even better.
The meeting ran long, some CEOs dodging the cameras on the way out or saying little.
Everyone in there wants the same thing, which is for Canadians to have better food pricing and for that to cool down, and it will.
The conversation has to include all the manufacturers, producers, farmers, and everything. It's not just about the retailers.
The industry minister says it's the first time all 5 CEOs have been in the room together, and he's walking out with a commitment.
Bottom line is that they agreed to work with the government to stabilize food prices in Canada.
The opposition says the government should have acted long ago, not once it's in political trouble.
Their response to all this is to hold a big photo op today. The Prime Minister claims food will be affordable by Thanksgiving.
I'm concerned that they're just talking again. And it's been 20 months since the cost of food inflation, has outpaced general inflation.
Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland also addressed the CEOs and reiterated the government's ultimatum that they have 3 weeks to come up with a plan or else could face punitive taxes. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Jim Stanford is an economist and the director of the Centre for Future Work. He says the government's meeting with the grocery CEOs is more significant than it might appear.
I think it's important, Andrew. I would say the outcome is imprecise, but potentially meaningful. How's that for sitting on the fence? We don't know what's in the agreement that was reached with the CEOs. We'll wait to see that. And then, of course, the question is, how will you enforce that agreement? But I wouldn't write this off as, just political theater. The fact that the grocery CEOs were called in, the fact that the public spotlight and public anger remains squarely focused on supermarkets. The vast majority of Canadians think supermarkets have profited from this inflation, and they're right, the supermarkets have. And the fact that the government is threatening further, more concrete action, potentially including an excess profits tax, all of that means those conversations were real today. And I would expect the CEOs to take them seriously and to come back with something important, not just symbolic.
Okay, so imprecise but potentially meaningful. That's fair, given that we've just heard this meeting just happened and we've just heard some reaction to it. But the Prime Minister made that announcement last week that there needs to be a plan by Thanksgiving, that's only a couple of weeks away, to stabilize prices. So what do you think that plan to stabilize prices might in fact look like?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And Thanksgiving is the interesting deadline for it as well. So we can all go out and buy that turkey and feel a little bit better about it. The issue of stabilizing prices versus reducing them, first of all, Andrew, is just a game of semantics. Stabilizing prices means stopping food inflation. Right now, food's been running at 8.5% per year. And if we got that to zero, which strictly speaking would be stable prices, that would be an enormous victory. So, all of this hand-wringing about, well, we have to bring prices down, not just stabilize them, is a sideshow. Reducing the rate of inflation is clearly the goal. How could the companies do it? Well, first of all, they could be a bit more modest in the profit margins that they're taking. The empirical evidence is absolutely clear that supermarket profits have doubled since COVID, and profit margins as a share of total revenue have grown significantly. That has made food inflation worse. So the first thing they can do is come back and say, we're going to restrain profit margins and take profit taking back to the level it was at before the pandemic. Second important goal, I think, Andrew, we're seeing significant declines in input costs in the food supply chain. global food prices and other raw material prices, logistics, inventory costs, transportation, even many energy costs have come down a lot. And I think that we're going to want to see from the CEOs a commitment to pass on those lower input costs very quickly to consumers. A third element might be emphasizing a broader range of more affordable brands and options in some of the food products that are on sale, so that people who are having a hard time making ends meet have got more options to think about. And all those things I think are meaningful things that the CEOs could undertake. But I think it requires the heat of the government's threats to impose more strict sanctions on the industry to give the CEOs the reason to take those initiatives seriously.
Okay, so, and then a lot of Canadians who are watching are just like, I just want to be able to go to the grocery store in a few weeks from now, yesterday, but in a few weeks from now, and just not have these prices be so much that I'm struggling just to kind of, put food on the table. So do you think that that is going to happen in the next couple of weeks, that there will be that relief of at least just the stop in this crazy rise in prices that we've seen?
No, certainly not, Andrew. And of course, what you described, the pain in households across the country, is absolutely true. Real wages have been falling. Workers are getting paid not enough to keep up with inflation. And food inflation has been more than twice as bad as overall inflation. And you're not going to fix that problem in 2 weeks. But I do think that at least we're talking about what an important concrete element of the source of the problem, and that's this concentrated supermarket industry we have in Canada. 3 giant companies control 2/3 of the market, and they've made hay out of that crisis. And at least we're shining the spotlight on them and expecting some changes from them. Interesting analogy, Andrew, with other countries. In Europe, several countries have tried exactly the same thing as we saw today. In France, for example, the government met with major food producers and retailers and demanded a commitment to reducing food inflation and bringing down, passing on the savings that we're seeing in the input costs, and it has made a difference there. So there's not going to be an instant result from this, but I do think it's potentially helpful.
Jim Stanford is an economist and the director of the Centre for Future Work.